Hello and welcome to Player 3 Podcast reacts to the E3 2016 Sony press conference. I'm your host, Luke Croft. Alongside me, we have the always visually stunning Larry Hunt.
Hi.
And then over here, he's been a stranger for far too long, and he can fix you a nice, delicious glass of Pepsi and steal your daughter's heart. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Martin.
Hi, everyone.
Seth. Seth.
Talk to me.
No, you talk to me.
There we go.
How have you been doing?
I've been good. I've been real busy. One day a week off of work is hard.
Now, Seth has been around. He just hasn't been with us. So
On camera.
So we appreciate you joining us for this late showing by Sony. Being on the East Coast has its perks most of the time, but tonight is not one of those perks, as it is 10:30 at night as we record this video.
And I have an hour drive home.
And you have to piece your mind back together after having it blown by that press conference that we just experienced.
Hashtag greatest fetus.
I'm telling you guys, I've watched a lot of E3s, and that... Oh, there's Ryan. I was like, there's a car pulling up in the driveway. Anyway, I've watched a lot of press conferences for E3. This is possibly the best conference I've ever seen.
And it definitely blew everything else away at this conference. And Microsoft had a strong showing earlier, and I was kind of talking like I wasn't sure how Sony would be able to top it, and now I realize how naive I was.
Well, and I think it's important to note that they kind of took a page out of the Microsoft playbook, which is we're just going to hit you with games. The entire time we have you here, we're going to hit you with games. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time with Sean Layden up on stage giving, a 10-minute speech about sales numbers or about PlayStation View or anything like that. We're just going wall-to-wall games. And because that's what we know you're watching for, that's what we know you guys have flown out to LA to see, and it paid off in a very, very big way. What do you think about it, Seth?
That's exactly what I was going to say. It was just an onslaught of games and game after game after game. I was a little weirded out at first when we were trying to figure out what was happening with the orchestra and the
beatboxing lady,
the sensual beatbox
she
queen.
Was into that beatbox.
Can you do the?
I mean, there was a little something like I'm doing this, I'm patting the drum, I'm not patting my fetus. It's
There's someone that's playing that on loop right now as they're trying to go to sleep.
I will say that part went on entirely too long before they got to the game.
Well, and but it was clearly like kind of an entr'acte, like here we go, we're about to get this party started. If you're standing in the lobby, come find your seat because it's beginning. And then they use that orchestra throughout the entire press conference, which was awesome. When they zoomed out from one of the, I think it was like when they started showing The Last Guardian and the orchestra was playing, I was like, they have scored this entire E3 presentation. This is awesome. So give a quick little rundown of what we got to see. They kicked off with God of War. Then Sony Ben revealed their new game, Days Gone. The Last Guardian finally got a release date of October 25th. We saw an extended gameplay of Horizon Zero Dawn. Saw an awesome cinematic thing for Detroit, which is Quantic Dream's new game. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard got revealed with full VR support. Then a bunch of VR stuff. Farpoint, Batman Arkham VR, Star Wars Battlefront VR, Final Fantasy 15 VR was revealed. Then we got to see an extended gameplay demo of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. A Crash remaster along with him being included in the new Skylanders got announced. We got to see a little bit of the Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. Then the man himself, Hideo Kojima, came out, 2 middle fingers flying in the air to Konami, saying, you can't tell me what I can and can't make. Hashtag Reedus Fetus, all right? And then
somewhere every member of Konami is just icing burns right now.
Yeah. And then we saw Insomniac Spider-Man, and then we also came back and saw Days Gone, like an actual gameplay for that. So let's just start off where they started off. Let's start with the God of War game. As we were watching it and they were doing the little entr'acte for the orchestra, I was like, this is God of War. This is absolutely God of War.
It sounds like God of War.
It was big. It was big building. It was guttural. It was It was everything. Yeah, it was everything you think of when you think of God of War. And then when whoever that is looking like Kratos comes out, crowd flips out. I thought it looked awesome. What do you guys think?
I have almost no experience with God of War, but it did look amazing. Beautiful game, and it looks like a lot of fun.
I don't know if this is supposed to be some sort of reboot or if it's. I mean, I'm not familiar with God of War much either, except for a little bit of Twitch footage here and there. But it could be a reboot. It could be a continuation somehow of the story. It's insane the difference from what little I know of kind of the Twitch reaction gameplay of the other games to this sort of open world, third person, camera behind dude feel, and it was just really dark and fun at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it was a total shift from what God of War normally is, which is kind of this hack and slash with puzzles built into it, almost 2.5D is not the right word for it, but a much further back perspective of it.
2.75D.
Yeah, there we go. Whereas this kind of took the more traditional third-person approach. In the clip that they showed, you're training your son to shoot a bow and arrow, and he's really reluctant to kill stuff. And there's a lot of different directions. Obviously, the story can go from there. But it was just really nice to see a familiar franchise done in kind of an unfamiliar way, and that's something I appreciate about Sony in general. Their willingness to take risk with their own IP like that. Any other thoughts about God of War?
Not for me.
All right, well let's talk about Days Gone real quick from Sony Bend. It's kind of been a little bit of a secret as to what they were working on. So we'll go from just the initial reveal to also the extended gameplay, which is helpful that it's showing right here. Seth, what do you think of this?
I mean, you could tell right away that it was a zombie game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at first, they're showing these kind of clips with a little bit of audio dubbed over, and I thought I was recognizing scenes from The Last of Us, like that little neighborhood, wherever. Spoiler alert.
The Last of Us remastered. Bill.
There we go. Where his daughter dies.
Dave. At the very beginning.
Yeah, I thought I saw that spot. Of course, I didn't.
When they panned out and you saw them kind of exploring that area.
Yeah. I was just waiting for it to be like The Last of Us from someone else's perspective, like along the line, parts of the story. It wasn't, but it just had that feel, even though we didn't know what the game was about. As soon as we saw those clips, we knew what the game was about.
Yeah. It did kind of have those Last of Us sensibilities about it, but in a way that, like, The Last of Us is about scarcity. It's about survival. It's about traversing in the best way possible to just make it to the other side. Whereas this seems much more intense.
Yeah, how much ammo did that guy burn?
Oh yeah, he was firing away.
Because it was hordes. It was crazy. The speed and number reminded me of Left 4 Dead, but even more amped up. Mm-hmm. And I'm excited for that. Slow moving zombies are just fun to me. Like, that's a lot of fun, but hordes of fast moving things, that's terrifying. How do you deal with that?
I really liked what you said, Larry, while we were watching it. It reminded me, of course, of World War Z, the way that the zombies or whatever they are moved. And you said it was like water. They're just sort of this force of nature, just coming and coming and coming. It's like you can't stop the tide, baby. It rolls on. It keeps on moving.
It was almost like if The Last of Us and Dead Rising had a child. Like, it kind of had the tone of The Last of Us.
Oh, like some kind of tar-covered umbilical cord fetus.
You're a prophet.
But with kind of just the overwhelming sense of enemies, presence of enemies as Dead Rising has. Like I said, we got to go ahead.
And it was interesting. The character you play is a bounty hunter in this world. Like some semblance of society has come back together, and you're playing kind of a role that I don't know that it has ever really been played in a zombie game. The focus is usually just on surviving the zombies, but this guy's surviving the zombies and also surviving just in putting food on the table by hunting down, I would assume, criminals, which implies even more society has survived.
There's a larger world.
Yeah.
There seems to be a Sony theme of, like, all right, we've kind of dealt in the apocalypse. Let's deal with a little bit of the aftermath of the apocalypse in terms of like, well, this game, as you guys have said, there's a little bit of a rebuilding of society. We saw Horizon Zero Dawn, which is they've been calling a post-apocalyptic, where it's like what happens after the apocalypse when nature is taken back over almost everything, nature and these beasts mechanical beasts that we've created. We also got a release date for The Last Guardian coming out in October, which was surprising to me. October and November are jam-packed generally, and while there is a sense of hype for The Last Guardian right now, it's very much motivated by the echo chamber of people of just the internet, and it had almost become a meme at before it was revealed that it was still in development and coming last year. And so now it's how do we live up to both the realistic expectations that people have for us, but also kind of this false sense of expectation that's been put on us because the internet has a tendency to snowball feelings about things. And I feel like this game would have made more sense like first week of August or third week of December, something like that. Let's get this out in one of those slower areas, or let's even hold it for January, for the beginning of January, kind of in that dying light window or something like that. But October almost seems like a death wish for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I said this earlier. I do not understand the hype for this game. It doesn't look like a bad game, but it doesn't look like a particularly interesting or good game to me either.
The game quite simply looks like booty.
Well, and the reason for the hype is because like Shadow of the Colossus and Ico and that's the team that also made this game. So it's obviously going to be an emotional experience, but is there an emotional experience that's really lived up to the hype that it's created? Like, if you're setting people up to feel some sense of sadness at the end of it, that's not really what's going to pull through on a lot of people who've just jumped on the Last Garden bandwagon because that's what the internet talks about to a great extent.
I think those two games, its predecessors were cult hits, and it's really hard to keep that train going. That's why there aren't 4 Donnie Darko movies.
Yeah, because the first one wasn't good.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I watched Donnie Darko and was like, I feel like I should like this, but it's because I'm supposed to like it. I don't know if I do like it. I felt the same way about Fight Club, so
I never ever actually watched Donnie Darko.
Really?
Yeah.
But you like Tears for Fears, so you got a head start on that one.
What?
Tears for Fears?
You'll see.
You gotta like that. Okay.
All right. We saw Horizon Zero Dawn. We've talked at length about Horizon. I think at least you and I think it's going to. This is one of my most anticipated games on the horizon. No pun intended.
Awesome concept, and it seeing the actual gameplay in action, it looks so fun.
Yeah, the conversation that Aloy has with the man who's running away from what he believes is a demon was really cool, showing that this isn't just a third-person action game. This really is something with RPG mechanics that you're dealing with. You're dealing in decisions. You're dealing in skills. You're dealing with a crazy jam-packed weapon wheel of all kinds of different abilities and ways to take down these corrupted beasts. The hacking of the mechanical bull that you can then begin to traverse with is a really cool concept. I have very, very, very high hopes for this game. You have any thoughts on it, Seth?
I mean, I remember talking about it back when I was on the podcast every week. It's always looked like something that's going to be fantastic, and the more I see of it, the better it gets. And sometimes I think that's a lot of times actually. I don't think that's the case. The more that the more little glimpses you get of it, and the longer those glimpses get, you kind of start to, the hype dies a little bit.
Yeah.
And so far, I mean, I did expect the bull to come into appearance. I was like, she's going to get a metal horse.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a bull, but I mean, every time I see this game, there's more and more I can do in it, and that's just very appealing to me.
And we're just hitting some of these and spending a little bit of time. We're going to move a little quicker moving forward here. Detroit from Quantic Dream, about a robot who becomes sentient and begins to realize, have his eyes open to the way that humans are treating robots. But you said it best, Larry, when you said it's a Telltale game that's like on steroids. It's a Telltale game that does Telltale better than Telltale, is what it appeared to be.
And it showed you one situation you deal with and just the multitude of ways that that situation can go poorly and the 2 ways that it could kind of work out. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it kind of begs the question, like, will there come a point where games, they can do it this well with that much graphical fidelity, with that much branching and differentiation in the story? Is it going to begin to push Telltale out of necessity with the way that they do things, even though they have their franchises that locked down, you know?
They're also two very different things, though. Like, how many games have we seen from Telltale in the last 4 years?
A bunch.
How many have we seen from Quantic Dream?
3. Yeah.
In the last 4 years?
When did Heavy Rain come out?
I don't even know.
I would say at least like 6, something like that. But I don't know.
Go ahead, make your point there.
But you know, Telltale does something very well, and it's well known for that. There's a chance that they could be overdoing it here in the near future, but I mean, you can compare them, right and rightly so, but they're also just so different because Detroit seems like it's just this huge experience, and that takes a lot of time and dedication, but you can't keep getting those stories like you do with Telltale from all kinds of different branches, you know, from between Batman. When does that come out?
Sometime this year.
Okay, well,
and 2010 was.
Well, I'm hungry for it.
Because they're revamping the engine for that game,
right?
So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that.
Yeah. But again, you can't. I've got one big meal on my plate with Quantic Dreams, Detroit, whatever the rest of the name is, and but I can have like meals for the rest of the week with Telltale's entourage.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. I love them both.
Is good. Wendy's is good. It's cheap, but every now and then you want to go have a steak. And so I get your analogy.
At Golden Corral, where the steak keeps coming as often as you ask for it.
Gross. Disgusting. All right, well, let's move to the VR section of it. Resident Evil being the first thing that we got to see. You guys picked up on it long before I did. I'm not really a Resident Evil person. The thing that jumped out to me was everyone was like, this is going to be Resident Evil Reboot. It's just going to be called Resident Evil. But it's actually Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. Yeah. So they're just continuing on with the numbering of it. I thought it looked terrifying.
Yeah, and when I did not pick up initially that it was a VR game. It would be even more terrifying in VR.
I'm really happy that I don't have to buy a VR set to play this game.
Yes.
But I just love it. It works especially well with the horror genre. What did it say at the beginning? Something about a kitchen? Before kitchen?
Before kitchen, yeah.
What does that mean?
Kitchen is the playable demo for VR where you like stab yourself in the leg and the witch lady's yelling at you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, and everybody talks about it being the greatest horror experience right now for VR, and so I guess it was their way of saying, like, look, we got something even scarier up our sleeve for you.
Well, I like that, but it's also cryptic, and I guess that's the point. Like, something, it just worked really well for me.
Yeah, and it seemed to really kind of embrace what made Resident Evil good in the beginning.
That kind of survival horror.
Getting back to the scary roots instead of just action, unlimited ammo, you're a muscle guy that can punch boulders out of the way.
And, of course, it's taken a little bit from PT, but I think everyone should at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
PT ain't using it.
I think all of our VR thoughts are pretty well documented, even from your time being on the podcast. So we all kind of have a sense where we came in, where you know, pretty disinterested in it. I mean, you're interested to see where it goes. I'm interested, but skeptically. And then you're just kind of...
I'm nowhere near interested enough to spend $400.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I would love when you buy it.
Yeah. To
come over and test it out a little bit, you know, give it a trial run. It was Game Informer. I don't know if you've read. I guess it was this month's issue. The kind of editorial introduction article, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
I'm not a journalist, a newsman, but he's just talking about how, you know, VR's got a little ways to go. You know, we've got to see what it's capable of, but so many people are skeptical, but a lot of those people haven't necessarily tried it out yet, and it's one of those things that you're either going to love it or you hate it. But probably a lot more people are going to love it.
Did we catch a sense, not just in Sony's thing, I think probably Sony would have moved the meter the most for all of us, but just over all of what we've seen so far here at E3, has it moved the needle at all for you? And maybe not necessarily in your interest in purchasing it, but in your confidence in the long-term viability of the product itself?
For me, it absolutely has. I've been saying the whole time that Sony has a long history of adopting these gimmicky things and getting their little boost of money at the beginning and then not supporting them long term. Furthermore, earlier today I said that Ubisoft single-handedly destroyed all of my confidence in VR because of how crappy their presentations were.
Because those were all demos, tech demos, like those weren't games that they showed.
But seeing what PlayStation is planning to do and hearing them say that they've got 50 games lined up by the end of the year, is that what they said? Like, all right, I believe they may be in it for the long haul now, and I see that this can actually be really good stuff. So I'm still not willing to pay the money for it, but I'm excited about it, and I think that it'll have the longevity that someday I may get into it.
What really changed it for me was, we knew that there were a ton of games coming out for this earlier, right? But none of them even sounded remotely interesting to me, to be honest. Like, a little cool, but not worth $100, much less $4. The fact that they're just attaching so many of their own IPs or third-party IPs, whatever, to VR. Resident Evil. There was some Final Fantasy in there. Batman, Battlefront. All of these AAA franchises are now kind of being lined up for this, and it makes me that much more interested. Again, not $400 interested, but
yeah, we're starting to see more of a risk-taking thing from third-party publishers. Because think about like UbiArt and EA doing things like Unraveled or Fee. They're willing to give money to these projects that are maybe a little bit more of a risk, even though they may be smaller. And with VR, now they're risking large sums of money on big pieces of hardware, and that gives me a little confidence that they're at least going to have to be invested in it to the point to make the money back that they're putting into it. It's not something that they can quickly abandon. Whereas we didn't get that with Move, we didn't get that with Vita, we didn't get that with the PlayStation Eye or the PlayStation Camera or anything like that. It gave me more confidence in VR as well. The Fallout stuff, that's not coming to PlayStation VR, but it is coming to Oculus, and that's an HTC, and that's another game that's like that kind of restores my faith, my hope that this could be a product that has some longevity within it. But I also think it restores my confidence in seeing that this is going to be an arm, a branch of gaming. It's not the future of gaming. It is a piece of the future of gaming. We're still going to have our flat screen televisions that we're gaming on for quite some time, and I'm perfectly fine with there being these two things that coexist with each other, and people seeing that there's value, like Bethesda saying, there's value in taking what was a flat screen experience and turning it into a VR experience for people who want to experience it that way. Let's talk Call of Duty Infinite Warfare real quick. Larry, your thoughts on it, being a Call of Duty non-apologist.
I don't like Call of Duty. I've tolerated it at times. I had one weekend where I loved it. It's not my thing. And when I saw the trailer for the new Call of Duty, I crapped all over it. It was the stupidest thing that I've ever seen in my life. They're going to this direction. What a dumb move. What a stupid move. And then I saw this. And I'm like, man, this doesn't even look like Call of Duty. And that's awesome. This looks fun as crap. I can't wait to get my hands on this.
Yeah, fast-paced, fooling around with gravity.
Space battles.
Yeah. Space combat with ships and stuff. That was awesome.
And not in ships.
What's that?
And not in ships.
And not, yeah. And the grappling hook. Just so many cool little pieces and just the thoughtfulness about what moving this franchise into space means. And I appreciated that quite a bit.
I've always liked Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Never apologized. Never scared.
We do want to know how they're shooting guns in space, though. So if anyone can help us figure that out, drop that in the comments.
But you know what? Knowing the developers that make COD, all three of them, they probably are going to explain that somewhere in the story.
Yeah.
So All right, let's move to the biggest piece, and then we'll start to wrap this thing up. Sean Layden comes out and says, "We have like one of the most famous men in video games, yada yada." And I was like, "It's Kojima." Like, you don't even have to look at the screen. Just know it's Kojima. Screen lifts. There's Luden's back there for the Kojima Productions. Kojima standing there. Luden begins throwing up a bridge for him, and Kojima walks down and reveals the game Death Stranding, which is just Silent Hills with a different title. The Reedus fetus is real.
Starts with Norman Reedus waking up next to fetus, which is
and he's
obvious.
Butt naked.
Yes, an obvious, very obvious jab at PT.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that was awesome. That just felt awesome to see Kojima just hitting Konami.
I can't wait to see how people explain this on the internet, and you're gonna have to tell me all about it because I don't plan to search it out. But I just imagine the
Seth
whole
can't
thing.
read. That's really what this all boils down to.
No read good, no. I just imagine the whole thing is like this giant metaphor. I don't even believe necessarily right now that it's a real game.
Dude, I'm right there with you.
I don't. There could be a game somewhere in there, but I just see this as this huge kind of metaphor for you've got Norman Reedus who really wanted to do this project from what he said to however many news outlets once we all heard that PT was canceled. The fetus is his love child. This is the game that he wanted. It just disappears. It's taken from him. He's stitched up. I imagine, I don't know how many executives are on the board of directors for Konami, but I imagine there are 5, and that those are like the threat looming in the distance. They've taken this child from him.
See, I imagined it was the 5 core Metal Gear games floating there.
Could be. Could be. I mean, you can probably read whatever you want to in there. There are the corpses of all these things. There are hands that have been gripping at him, like tearing him apart. I don't know. I look forward to looking more into this one.
Yeah. You look forward to me looking more into it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll watch this again and try to tear it apart a little more on my own, but for some outside second opinions.
I'm skeptical about this for a couple reasons. Number one, I thought at most we may get a little like black screen with sounds going on behind it and then the title of the game coming up. This was a fully rendered trailer for it, and Kojima has spent time his whole tour of studios was trying to find an engine, and I don't know if he's even made a decision, if he has, he's only done it in the last month or so. And
I don't know, dude. Like, this had the outlandish, crazy Silent Hill horror vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that Kojima just went ahead and ran with his vision and just threw a different name on it.
But the problem is it was being built in an engine he doesn't own.
Right.
So
all he had to do was find an engine to start.
Yeah.
He had in his head what he wanted to do. That's what I think is happening.
Yeah. So it just seems a little too precarious for me to feel like it's anything real. But why would they waste time doing it? That's the question. Like this was 5 minutes of the biggest hour and a half of your year for Sony. Like, why now? And why would you do that? So that's the only thing within my brain saying, okay, maybe this is real.
I don't know. Kojima's such a showman, though.
That's
I can imagine.
Sony
him.
Doesn't even know it's real.
I can imagine him paying like 4 of the 5 minutes out of his pocket, and maybe like half the musicians. How expensive could that have been to score this entire show with beatboxing, drumming women, and
sensual,
sensual beatbox, drumming, moaning women, and 1,000 violinists.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The whole thing blows my mind.
And we forgot this little detail. When he first comes out, once the crowd finally stops, he immediately initiates the onslaught against Konami with, "I'm back."
I'm back.
It was so awesome. It was so good. All right. Well, let's begin to wrap this thing up. Seth, what we've been doing is we've been giving it a letter grade.
Hey, real quick.
Yeah.
Crash Remaster, you mentioned that briefly, I guess, later Star Wars. But that Spider-Man game from Insomniac actually looks like a really good game.
Yeah.
There have been Spider-Man games recently, and I had no interest in them. But this legitimately looks like a fun game.
Yeah. And it's going to be exclusive to PlayStation 4. And a lot of people were guessing Sucker Punch for this, but it ended up being Insomniac. And they've kind of got, some roots there. And Insomniac does a lot of things, and if it has anything remotely as over the top as like a Sunset Overdrive, like Sunset Overdrive was kind of big, larger than life. I think Spider-Man's kind of larger than life. He's one of the more comedic heroes, comedic superheroes. I think it could do really well.
And a lot of the problems with some of the previous games that I got my hands on were issues with traversing the environment. And the way they handled Sunset Overdrive, I think that they're a great group to handle Spider-Man's weird way of navigating the world.
Yeah. All right, so what we've been doing a letter grade for the conference that we just watched and a review and a word for the one that we just watched. So you need some time to think, or you got it?
No, I got it right now.
Awesome.
For the whole presentation.
Yep.
S, because Kojima just. Even if nothing else had happened in the show, that would have bought and sold it. Yeah. That's how they rank things. That's the best rank in Metal Gear, S+, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm going to give it. I mean, it was everything I wanted to see. After, was it last year's conference where they just talked, or was that the year before?
Last year was the one where they started strong, talked for 45 minutes, ended strong, but they lost us in the middle.
Yeah. So after that, I mean, it was a breath of fresh air for me with Sony. I think they did everything right. I wouldn't have minded if they hadn't talked at all, but there was little enough to where, I was pleased all the way around.
Yeah.
Review in a word.
All right, Larry.
I give them an A+. This was just in this situation, Sony was the honor student that somehow pulls a 120 grade. And so Xbox was sitting there with its 100 perfect score writing its valedictorian speech, and then found out that this jerk came in and just obliterated everything.
And this is coming from a guy who doesn't even own a PlayStation.
Right.
So this isn't fanboying, right?
I am an Xbox fanboy.
Yeah.
And my one word is just wow.
I give it an A+ as well. I mean, wall-to-wall games. It was just so good. It's all been said. My review in a word is very self-aware. I think just self-aware. Hyphenated, that counts as one word. I think Sony understood like what we need to come out. People's criticism against us has been we are not seeing enough of your first party stuff. We've got Uncharted, we've got a couple other little things that have been exclusive. We want to know what we can look forward to as PlayStation owners that nobody else in the world has to look forward to. And we got God of War, we got Days Gone, we got The Last Guardian, we got Horizon Zero Dawn, we got Detroit moving down, we got the Crash remaster, and we got the Kojima game, we got Insomniac Spider-Man. These are all things that people can look at and be like, only PlayStation people can be excited about all of those games that I just named. And
it hurts.
They were so aware of that, and so they just went wall to wall with it. I'd love to go back and do like they do with the debates and say how long did so and so talk, and just see just how much time it was with Sony people talking. And I bet it would have been under 7 minutes, and the rest of the hour and a half was just games.
Not counting the first 30 minutes of that musical orchestration.
Of the entr'acte. So.
As opposed to Ubisoft's solid hour and a half of talking.
So I think the universal rank for us would probably go Sony, Microsoft, Bethesda, EA, Ubisoft.
Yes.
I think that's how it would go.
And probably whatever else happens tomorrow, which we're not really covering, will probably still go above Ubisoft.
Yeah, Nintendo's the only one going tomorrow. There was a PC one today, but who cares about those nerds? So, all right. Well, for Seth, for Larry, for Ben, for Diz, this is Luke thanking you for listening to this really super long episode of the Player 3 Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Player 3 Podcast. Subscribe over on youtube.com/Player 3 Podcast. And give us a review. That would help out a whole lot. We are the Player 3 Podcast.
Ooh, bye.
P3P.